we had to lock Pudge up because all you're gonna hear is honking and hooting.
But is this any better?
Well, I think he'll settle down eventually. So I'm feeling like Beetlejuice in this outfit, and you look like you've just been sent down from heaven. You look like a ghost.
You say ghost, I say heavenly angel.
Heavenly angel.
Oh,
this guy, angel. I'm like, so he was wearing a gray shirt. I didn't like the gray shirt. I just don't really like gray, and it was like really wrinkled. So I was like, can you just put on a white shirt? His shorts were fine. The shorts he was wearing were fine. And then I see him changing in the closet. He's putting on these Christmas pants, and I'm like, what? Who told you to do that?
No one told me. I wanted to do it myself.
So then I said, no, we're not doing Christmas pants because this is going up in January. I said, just put on a white shirt. Now he's just in all white. So this is how we got there. So, hi, and welcome back to another video on the vlog. This is Vince. If you guys don't know, he is my husband, and he is the father of my unborn child.
Hey, yo.
This is Archie inside the womb. We are 17 weeks this week. By the time this video goes up, we will probably be closer to 20 weeks, maybe 19 weeks.
Hot dang.
I know. So we wanted to talk about something that I felt was important or could be helpful to other people. So when I announced that I was pregnant, I got so many questions, like Archie questions, pregnancy questions, motherhood questions, and I kind of wanted to just focus in on one thing, which was basically going from being a couple that wanted to stay child-free to where we are now. I feel like we're gonna have to take you along this journey. So I also have a bunch of questions from you guys, so I'm gonna try and like go through this in a cohesive way. So the first big question is basically, how did we come to the decision to have kids? Before I give you his side and my side, I want to make it clear first that at the beginning of our relationship, so we started dating in 2013, and we had made comments and we had sort of like inside things about like what we would name a daughter. I don't really know how that came about, but we had, maybe he'll tell you, but we had a fictional name. We picked Olive for a girl. And so, oftentimes in just conversation here and there for like the first 2 years, we would just randomly bring up Olive or like reference to having a kid. But over the years, obviously that has changed, and we've just sort of flip-flopped back between wanting a baby, not wanting a baby. So I wanted to start on, I guess, Vince's side first, like what his thought process was from the beginning of our relationship to where we are now, and like how you came to that decision, not with me, but like in your own mind as like a individual person.
Right. I mean, I guess I would just say that I've always wanted to have kids, like thinking back to when I was younger and would think about being an adult and being married and stuff. It did kind of always, in my mind's eye, have a vision of I had a vision of having kids in that life. So maybe I would say that coming into, a serious relationship with Charmaine and like knowing that this was going to be the person that I wanted to spend my life with, that still kind of was what was in my mind's eye. And just that story that we were talking about is like when we first started talking back in 2011, I remember one of our chats, I think either I was watching at the time or had just watched the movie Easy A, which is such a great movie, starring Emma Stone, and her character was named Olive, and just, I love that character to death. And so I was just thinking like, wow, Olive is such a great name. So again, this is when we were talking, we were not in a relationship together in 2011, but we both kind of like talked about that character and talked about how that's such a great name, and imagine like quote unquote we had a little daughter named Olive. That'd be so cute. So then that's where that came from. So like I said, then you get into the relationship a couple years later, and like Charmaine said, it was just kind of a thing where you just sort of talk in passing or almost jokingly sometimes about having the kid and it being Olive, and it just became like a somewhat of a given in my mind that that's what we would do. But then the relationship progresses, and obviously you go through what you go through, and there was a long time that we weren't living together, and then finally we were living together as of early 2017. And then, having done long distance for that long and now you're in together, you just sort of start focusing in more in the here and now and like figuring out how to live together. And, once we got into our groove of what life actually living together is like, I suppose I got more based in like reality, day to day, figure out how this works between us and maybe not focus so much on thinking like to a future that had a kid in it. And at that point we were newly married as well. So yeah, just all those thoughts of like here and now, I suppose, took over.
And that was in 2017. We got married in 2016 technically, but I didn't really start living here full time till 2017.
Yeah. With that, I guess, and just my overall sort of approach to our relationship, because it's been very unique. Like I said, we did long distance from 2013 until 2017. You just kind of roll with the punches and like I'm always willing to change, be adaptable to change, and like if things are gonna be a little bit different than how I once envisioned it in the past, like I'm okay with that. So I think that was sort of part of it too, is like we were just trying to figure out our life, and once we got into a groove, or like we got to a point where we kind of liked our freedom, or I can say, if we're just talking about me, yeah, like to be able to sort of live life the way we were living it, as far as being in a relationship without a child. So there was a point in time that, yeah, like I thought, this is great, and I enjoy this. We can do what we want when we want. I see all the merit in all of that. So I think that's kind of where at some point it was like, do we even have kids? But then, again, like I said, adaptable, fine. If that was the way I eventually switched to thinking, then time goes on even more. We're more together here in Canada, and just starting now at some point to think about the future more. And then you start to get back to that place of like, I guess I really do want a kid. So we had multiple discussions over time.
Yeah,
going back and forth on it, which, I think is normal. You talk these things out, and eventually, yeah, we just got to a place where I think individually we were thinking about what we really wanted. Again, over a long period of time. This wasn't just like a very quick thing. I think we both individually came to a place where we're like, I think there would be regrets later on if we didn't even try. Like, not to say there's no given that we would conceive even if we did try, but I think we both individually came to that conclusion that we thought there would be regrets later on in life if we didn't try. I honestly also think we'll both be great parents. So, there's that part of it too. It just eventually got to that point where we came together and talked about it and made a pinky promise that, yeah, we would actually try in earnest. And, given our ages at the time that we made that pinky promise, it was like, we kind of have to get started now.
Yeah, definitely felt the clock tick in, especially with, me having PCOS and endo. It was only going to get more risky as I aged. So we really did have to, I did feel like when I turned 33 that I had to make like a choice, or I had to like this was the year I had to figure it out, because I always told him, like, if it happens, I don't want to be over 35. I was like, I don't want to be like an old mom. No offense to anyone who's had kids later in life, but that just, like, my mom had me when I was young, and I like that we don't have a massive age difference, and I do feel like that's why we're so close. And I would have wanted the same. So that was a major reason, health reasons, and then just wanting to be closer in age to my kid than not. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that is Vince's side. I do have notes here because I didn't want to forget. I think the first, I don't know, like before Vince came into the picture, I never really even imagined myself like settling down and getting married. I don't know. I feel like I was in a string of really like, just like crappy, mediocre, whatever relationships up until that point. And I never really saw the, I guess, upside of committing to one person forever. I didn't want to be stuck with one guy forever, just because, honestly, this is just the honest truth. Like, I mean, besides dating guys that weren't great for me, I got bored really easily. And I just was like, there's no way that I can spend my life with one person. Like, I'm gonna get bored. So I never really imagined myself as like the wife with the kids and whatever. Like, I always kind of thought like I'd just like cruise through life by myself, date here and there, just have fun. And if I did ever think about kids, it was always in terms of like single mom, just me, and never carrying a child. Like, I always said like I would adopt. So when he came into the picture, I guess I didn't really have a a preference, a strong preference of whether I wanted kids or not, even by that time. And surely never even thought about conceiving on my own, you know, or like carrying a child myself. But the more serious things got with Vince, even despite our whole talk with Olive and stuff, like, to me that was just, it was just like a cute little thing between us, but I never really pictured it like having a daughter with him in like a whole life with a kid. It was just a cute thing between us on my end. But as things got more serious with Vince and I realized that I did want to marry him, it kind of started maybe clicking in my brain like, okay, well, if I'm gonna marry him, like, we probably will have kids. And I was okay with the idea. I was never super excited about it, like, oh, I can't wait. Like, as soon as we got married, people were like asking, when are you guys gonna try, like, when is the baby, you know? And up until that point, like he said, we were doing long distance, so we never knew what life was like with just us. Like, we never got to like really just enjoy each other. And when we were doing long distance, the longest we would be with each other at any given time was like 2-3 weeks,
maybe 4, like at the absolute max. And that
I was self-employed for a good chunk of it, and so I did have the freedom of staying in Canada for longer periods of time. But even then, like, you're doing long distance with a guy for years, and like the longest spurt you can go is like a month maybe, right? And so when I married him and I moved here, my first thought was not, let's have kids right away. Like, I just wanted to settle into our life, get to know him more as like now a roommate, and see how the dynamic of that would work. I'll say that we did have a lot of things to work through in the beginning as roommates, and like there were a lot of times where it got really hard, and you know, we got into arguments and things weren't great, but like we worked through them. And I knew at that point, like, this was no time to even think about a kid if we couldn't be in the same rhythm in the house, because I find that to be very important. Like, it's not like I was raised this way, but I don't feel like there are strong gender roles, like a woman should be doing this and a man should be doing that. Like, I wanted us to just find our own rhythm and figure out what worked for us. And so for years, like, that we had been working on that, I was like, there's no way that we can bring a kid into this world yet. You know what I mean? And that's just being for real. It's not like we were ever on the brink of divorce, or like we got into such a bad argument that like one of us left or something. It was never like that, but mild frustrations here and there, sometimes built up anger or whatever, or resentment or frustration. It's more frustration, not resentment. And I really wanted to work through those things first. I wanted to really make sure that it wasn't just a short-term fix, that things were actually fixed, so that we could run a household smoothly without any frustration. So that was a huge thing, and that took years. And so for that big chunk of years, I was never even thinking about kids, nor had we even really like talked about it. Like, I feel like we didn't really even start really thinking about kids until like I turned 30. Like, I feel like we both were just kind of like good with living together and like having Pudge and just being in our own routine. So there was that aspect of things, and then there's another aspect of things that like I haven't talked about publicly. I mean, I've kind of alluded to it. I've talked a little bit here and there without actually saying directly, what it is, but like there are trauma things that I deal with that I felt like if I brought a kid into the world, I would not be a good mother. I don't know, I felt like I was not mentally prepared for one, emotionally prepared for one. I feel like I didn't have the tools to like self-regulate my emotions or my thoughts. And I was scared that if I brought a kid into the world that like I would project that onto the kid and I would just not be a good mom. So it took years of me trying to like sort through those feelings, especially because it has to do with childhood trauma. To me, I was just like, well, if those things happen to me, like why the hell would I want to bring a kid into this world? You know, like that was a huge thing. It was like, well, if I don't bring a kid into the world, I never have to deal with the feeling of anxiety or whatever around that topic. So therapy, lots of talk therapy, lots of sort of opening up trauma and wounds within our family, me, like there was just so much work that I felt like I had to do. And I don't mean like jotting down in a diary or like going to one therapy session and unpacking my feelings. Like there was years of us just talking through emotions, talking through things that would come up. I don't know, I feel like it wasn't until probably the beginning of this year that I felt like it was weird, because don't you feel like I kind of hit the lowest at one point in terms of everything exploding, but in a way like that exploding was like the real beginning of like healing, I guess.
Yep, I could see that.
It was weird because I tell people that this has been in ways like the worst and best year of my life in terms of like everything that's happened. And it's weird because like obviously without telling you guys exactly what's going on, it's like kind of confusing, but I didn't feel like until this year that I was like, I think I'm okay. Like I think I'm in a place now where I can see myself as a mom, and I feel like I've sorted things out in my head enough that I could kind of separate my trauma from raising a kid, if that makes any sense. So there was that whole aspect. Sorry, that was a really long tangent, but that was a huge part of why I didn't want to become a mom. And then, I don't know, another reason was just the world is kind of crazy, and like I was like, why do we want to bring a kid into a world with like so much hate, violence, racism, global warming, like all of these things. I'm like, what does our kids' future actually look like?
Or even during the pandemic.
Yeah, during the pandemic,
when we were locked down, it was like, I mean, there's plenty of quote unquote pandemic babies, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If that was the right time for them, it just made it a good situation that you have to be stuck inside together anyways. But for us, we weren't quite, again, at that point to be fully ready, and and that just made it an extra layer of like, oh my gosh, why would you want to bring in a kid when what they would be, subjected to right away is mask up, lockdown, blah blah blah. So that, yeah, just a lot of different things that were like,
I know. And I mean, I still have those anxieties, of course, but we ultimately made the decision that we did. And then I think the last thing was what he kind of alluded to is like the freedom that we had just as a child-free couple. I don't want to say this offensively or anything, but we really were kind of the last of our cousins, friends in some ways, to have a kid, and we got to see that whole process and get an inside look into their lives. And it's not that I thought it was a bad thing, but we saw little glimpses here and there of how different their lives were from ours. Something as simple as like, it's Friday, like let's go to the movies, or let's just go to the grocery store and go grocery shopping. Like nothing prevented us from just doing whatever the hell we wanted. Whereas when you have kids, you're working around feeding schedules, napping schedules, school, like all these things where I'm like, man, that would be like a huge sacrifice to not be able to just do whatever the hell I wanted on a weekend, wake up whenever I wanted. So to me, I felt like there was such a luxury in a way of not having kids. And I think a lot of people like to bully people who choose to be child free, or they feel like, oh, they're like holier than thou, or that I don't know, there's this weird sort of, and I see it on like TikTok all the time, videos of people who are very pro kid who talk smack about people who are anti kid. And I don't know, I don't think it's a selfish decision to not have kids. I really don't. I don't think it's selfish. I think it's just a decision that you make for yourself. I don't think that every single person on this planet is meant to procreate and have kids. And I don't think that having, and this might be controversial, but I don't think that having a kid is a right. I think it's a privilege, and it's one that comes with so much responsibility, financial responsibility, emotional responsibility, physical responsibility. I don't think that you should bring a child into this world just because you want a kid. I think that you have to be equipped to make sure that you're giving that child the best life possible. I don't know. I wasn't sure if I was ready to like make that sacrifice and give up what we had, because it was good. It is good. You know, like just the house is so clean and could do whatever we want, no crying baby and stuff. But I will say that on the flip side of that, when we have witnessed everyone around us having kids, we also saw like the joy and the happiness that came with it, and like seeing all the toys around, and like it just, I don't know, I was like, yeah, you would be sacrificing a lot, but like the joy that they bring is like incredible. You know, like we have nieces and nephews on both sides, and like we freaking adore them, like obsessed with them. And that was a huge reason why I kind of flipped a switch in my head, maybe not in one day, but like over time. I think the birth of my niece Millie was a huge part of it. I think anyone who knows me personally, or even maybe just follows me on socials, knows how obsessed I am and was with Millie when she was born. My sister always called her my daughter because she basically, like, I don't know, I feel like I couldn't love her more if she was my own. And so her coming into the world was just like a huge wow. Like, that's like a feeling that I've never experienced before. So I was like, maybe I do want that. Like, maybe we do want that, you know? And there were times in the house where like all the plants were watered, the house was clean, I had no work to do, and it was just quiet. And I don't know, I almost felt like something was missing almost. It's weird. Like, just, yeah, there was one day in particular where just like I had really nothing to do, and I was just like, man, it's really quiet here. And like I kind of envisioned maybe like it would be nice to have like a little one running around, you know? I don't want to just like, you know, because obviously I went into all the reasons why I didn't want to have a kid, but there were all these little moments and big moments that led to me also wanting a kid. And obviously we ended up where we are now, being pregnant. So yeah, I think that was like both of our thought process in terms of how we came to the decision to have kids. Yeah. So that was a big chunk of what I wanted this video to be, that whole discussion about that. So the next thing is, or the next question was, how did we know we were ready? I think one thing for him, and we both didn't talk about this, but like, you know, how we had gone back and forth over the years about having kids. There were moments where like I was very like, we should do it, and he was like, we shouldn't. And then there were moments where he was like, we should do it, and I was like, no, we shouldn't. So it wasn't like we were always on the same page about like when would be the right time if we even wanted to have it or have a kid. And I think one huge aspect of that was the finances.
Yeah.
So, you know, I obviously, as a woman, you know, every time I went to do an update on my PCOS, my endo, sometimes it would be better, sometimes it would be worse. And in the times that it was worse, like they were finding cysts and things like that, it would come in my head like, man, it's, you know, what if it only gets worse from now? And like, maybe we should have kids. And not anytime, but there were a few times where I brought it up to him, like, gotta do it. I'm turning 31, I'm turning 32. And he was just adamant, like, we're not making enough money yet to like be in that place. And this is just being transparent. Vince is like, he's the sole breadwinner. He supported me solely for a long time when I wasn't making a lot of money when I moved here. And so yeah, like I could imagine that there's a lot of pressure of like supporting the household plus bringing a kid into the world. I was thinking more of the like body things, like can I bring a kid into the world? And he was more so thinking like, can I afford a kid? And so there were a lot of times that he just shot down the idea because he was just like, it's not time, like we're not there yet.
I mean, I will say, like, it's... Can
you scoot in just a little bit? Sorry.
I will say, like, it's a balancing act because we've talked to plenty of, you know, couples and, you know, family, whether they're family or friends who had children before us, and you would always hear the same thing, and I agree with it, which is there is never a perfect time to have a kid, right? Like, there's always going to be a reason for or against it being quote-unquote the perfect time. So it's not that I was in my own mind thinking, like, there will be a perfect time and we'll know, and it's just going to be absolutely like black and white, now is the time. But at the same time, the flip side of that is I do think, even if you're like kind of open to interpretation for when the right time is, I think there's a case to be made when it's absolutely not the right time. And, you know, over time you hear of stories where, you know, perhaps, at least from the outside, it would seem like that, you know, for whichever couple you're talking about, I think maybe that wasn't the ideal time to have a kid. And I'll bring in my own like story, and I suppose me and my siblings' story, which is growing up, God bless my mom, she raised us as a single mother, but lo and behold, like, of course, with that came a lot of financial struggles. Like, growing up, there was not a lot of money to go around, a lot of scrimping and scraping just to get by. And again, bless her, we always had a roof over our head, always had clothes on our back, always had like amazing meals because she was a great cook and everything. But like, there's obviously a part of me that was imprinted with this idea that like, that's not the ideal scenario to bring kids into the world. And again, and this is not actually, just to be very clear, like my mom and dad, when they had us, things were actually great as far as like finances were, you know, as far as that went. And then things happened, they divorced, and with that and all the circumstances around it brought essentially like financial ruin from choices that were made. So that's my point, is like, you can see how things can go sideways at any moment. And just my own personality, again, maybe imprinted on me because of what I went through, was like wanting to control as much as you can control when you know that things can suddenly happen like outside of your planning. So for me, a lot of it, like she was saying, is the financial side, like knowing, like she said, that I was sort of responsible for the brunt of all the bills and stuff, and you just like think about, okay, well, now adding on everything that would come in with having a child and supporting them and raising them in the most healthy way possible. It's like you said, I kind of would look at things and be like, we're not quite there yet. All that to say, that was, you know, I agree with Charmaine, that was a big reason, you know, why there was hesitation for certain periods of time. Again, I completely agree, there's no potentially perfect time. You can always find a reason why, now is not exactly the right time. But I just think, generally speaking, you also, you know, should be responsible enough to say, maybe it's not the perfect time right now, but it's also not the right time right now, given where our lives are, say, financially, to just sort of, in a not so planned way, just say, yeah, let's just do it, forget, like, don't worry, it'll all work out. Like,
yeah,
I think that argument only goes so far.
Yeah, I didn't want to have any anxieties around like, can we afford rent this month? Can we afford formula? Can we afford daycare? Like those kinds of things. I didn't want to be living paycheck to paycheck. I didn't want to feel like we couldn't have extra things, like we couldn't travel or whatever. Like I wanted to just feel like adding someone to our family was what's the word I'm thinking of? Like it was a good thing and not a stressful thing.
And not an extra quote unquote burden.
And not another burden. And I certainly didn't want the child to feel like they were a burden.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so, don't touch the table, sorry, because the mic is probably picking up all that sound. Oh my God, I hope you weren't doing that the whole time.
No, just the last little.
Okay, cool. So,
can I, just interject? Just really want to quickly interject, but like, I hope everyone listening to this understands this is not a judgment on folks whose situations is more closely resembling what we just said, the like, maybe not being so planned, not being in like the most 100% great financial situation. You bring in a kid. We're not judging anyone. And again, because how could I judge someone? Like I grew up in a family or in a household where money was tight all the time, but my God, was there so much love in that household between my mom, me, my brother, and my sister. Like, so again, like those can be the greatest situations for that particular family. Absolutely. So again, no judgment, but it's just, I'm just speaking on myself. It's like, I figure it's a natural reaction. Like I know how hard it was growing up that way, even though it was a house full of love, that it just made me naturally inclined to not want to start trying until I felt like there's as good a chance as possible that wouldn't be, the situation in our household. So, but I just want to say that, like, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. We're not trying to judge anyone. There's just so many different, like, innumerable ways that a couple will find themselves getting into family planning, and all of it's fine.
But I think because we had waited so long and we had discussed it, like we did want it to be a conscious decision. I really feel like we went about things the way that was best for us personally, not speaking for anyone else. I know I have many people in my life who have had unplanned pregnancies, and that, those kids grew up with so much love. They grew up with enough and they're thriving now. And so, I'm not saying that like our mentality in going into having a kid when we did is like the only way to do it or the best way to do it. Yeah. It was our way. Just to make that clear. So I guess it wasn't really until maybe last year that I felt like I was in a position now where I could start contributing to the household a bit more, and I think he started to feel like things were better, and he felt a little bit more confident in our abilities to support ourselves plus another one. Obviously YouTube has been a massive part of that, so I'm obviously like super grateful. But that's ultimately why we felt like we were ready. I think I got to a place mentally and emotionally where I was like, I can see it, I can picture it, being a mom. And then I also felt like, we're in a good place financially. Like he's had a few job changes and promotions since we first started dating, really. I've kind of flip-flopped between this and that, but I feel like I'm now in a good place financially. I feel like it could always be better, but like I'm literally like I'm striving for better right now. And so, that's I think that's why we
and I guess that kind of brings it to light too, where it's like she said, things have started to get better, and there could be that temptation to be like, well, but it could be even better, so maybe we wait a little bit longer. But that's the part of like, well, there is no perfect situation. Let's just say, like she's mentioned, things are better, and then you factor in, we are getting older, and then just everything's already said. So that, I suppose that's why it felt like, okay, that's like it's the right time.
We should start trying. It was definitely like a weird moment though, like just getting off birth control and stopping my meds. Like I was like, holy crap, we were actually doing it. But it's not like we got pregnant right away. It took us about a year.
Yeah, close to it.
And it was funny because I told him that I only wanted to try for a year. I was like, I don't really want to try any longer than a year because it's exhausting. But it's also funny because when we were about to hit the year mark, I was like, well, I'm going to talk to my doctor about fertility
Right.
help. So I think even in my own mind, even though I said I only want to try for a year, because again, we just didn't want to live with regrets. Like, we want to know that we at least tried and it like didn't work or whatever. But I think maybe in my head I was like, well, screw the 1 year. Like, I'm gonna just see what else I can do to like make it happen. So yeah, that's where we ended up. Somebody asked, how does it feel going from potentially child-free to actually conceiving?
Like I said, we've hopefully outlined that we have, I think, a pretty good grasp on both sides of the coin, right? Like, I can 100% see the pros of being a childless couple, or dinks, as they call it, dual income, no kids.
Yeah, dual income.
Like, and again, God bless anybody who lives that way and continues to, and will go out throughout the rest of their life being that way. I don't have any qualms with that. I think it's great for that particular couple who would do that. But on the other side, yeah, that's like, once we got to that place of knowing or feeling like we could support a child, and just knowing how much love there is in our relationship, it's just like, it, feels like you can see how adding an addition to the family would just make everything so much better. So, slowly over time, I would say, and hopefully we've conveyed that, is like your mind starts to go from, maybe fixating on all the positives of the childless situation to, envisioning the joys and the positives of having a child, and eventually it just sort of wins you over. I suppose is one way to say it, right? And again, just back. Like, I think if you ever asked me throughout my life, in my teens, in my young adulthood, etc., if you ever asked me, like, do you think you'll be a dad? I think at every point in time I would have said yes. It was only until, like, you get in this, what is going to be the final relationship for me, like, with the person I want to be with forever, and then you just start to hone in a little bit more on that individual situation and say, okay, well, actually, maybe this isn't the right time for us. But like I was getting at, just the overall thought of, like, Vince, do you see yourself as a dad? If you had asked me that along the way, I pretty much always would have said yes. So, right?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to derail the conversation. I'm just trying so hard not to laugh.
Oh, no.
But what you just said reminded me of, do you want to tell everybody what what you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were young?
Oh, yeah, so this is a funny story. Hella funny story.
I'm dying.
Oh, hey, sorry. Well,
that's okay. Sorry,
we'll
we're
put
gonna
a pause.
He's getting a phone call. Sorry, we just his family FaceTimed us, so had to take that call. But story time.
I'll tell the story, but what was the overall question that we were answering? Like, I'll tell the story, but I can't remember.
Oh, you were talking about, like, when you had envisioned when you were younger, like, if you could be a father, you always thought yes.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well...
Wait a minute. Okay, so funny childhood story was, I grew up Catholic, and so I think at around, like, 8, maybe 7 years of age, I think it was my mom or someone just, like, asked me, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a priest. Which is where it ties in. If that was the case, if I ended up being a priest, there certainly would be no child to be spoken of, because this relationship wouldn't exist. But the true story behind that, because I think my mom took it as like, oh my gosh, he's gonna be a holy priest, and what an amazing thing.
Because his mom is very religious, so that was like a
devout,
dream come true for her.
Catholic, yeah, exactly. So she loved it. But like, the actual truth behind why I thought that would be great is that from my like 7 or 8 year old point of view, I was like, wait a minute. So from my point of view, it was like, I already have to, it's like, me as a 7 or 8 year old, I already have to go to church every week. And the priest's there every week. So he's doing about as much work as I do. Yeah, he leads the thing. But those are the only days he works. And everyone just pays him with the collections. So I'm like, so you're telling me I wouldn't have to do any more work than I already do by going to church every week, and I just get paid to live that way. So it's like, I want to be a priest.
And then tell them why you eventually didn't want to be a priest.
A few short years later, I discovered girls. And I was
And
like,
you found out
wait
you
a second. So if I'm to be a priest, it's not going to be any
no
girl stuff.
Yeah, no
so I'm like,
He's
forget
like,
it.
yeah.
Forget it.
Forget that dream. So anyways, that's what I was thinking of. I was like, oh, young Vince, so naive. Yeah, so that was his reason, or that was his feelings of potentially being child-free to now conceiving. I think mine is a pretty simple answer. I'm just relieved because I don't know, it was like kind of like mentally exhausting to not know and to just be on the fence and like flip-flop back and forth. I really did envy the people who were like, I always knew I wanted kids, and I also envied the people that were like, no, I can't stand kids, I don't ever want kids. I'm like, man, why can't I just like feel a certain way? Like when, like I want my body to just tell me, or like my mind to just tell me, like, do you want kids or do you not want kids? Like, shouldn't it be like kind of a simple answer? Like, you either, not taking into account all the reasons why we put off having kids, finances, trauma, whatever, just the question, do you want kids? I was just like, I don't know. I freaking don't know. I really don't know. And so now, being in a position where, you know, I'm literally pregnant, I just feel relieved. I just feel relieved to not be on the fence anymore and to just put that to rest, because it was just, I was like, God, I need to make up my mind. Like, why can't I make up my mind? And then the anxiety around like, but what if the choice I make is the wrong one? And what if I regret it? You know, like all these things. So, yeah, I just feel an overwhelming sense of relief. Just like, thank goodness I don't have to think about that anymore.
True.
So that's how my answer was nice and short. Just feel relief. A lot of people asked, what is the significance of the name Archie? Or like, what's the backstory behind Archie? So actually, his full name is going to be, or his first name is going to be Archie. Middle name will be Leo, after my dad. His name is Leonardo. He actually changed his name. I think he changed his name. I don't know when he changed his name, and I don't know why he changed his name, but his birth name was Leonardo. And then Archie, I don't really know where that came from. I like, obviously we told you our girl name was Olive. That kind of changed for me a lot over the last few years in terms of what I wanted for a girl name. Like, for a while I was fixated on the name Max for a girl, and it really came from Stranger Things. I loved Max, and I was just like, man, that's such like a cute name for a girl, just Max. And then when I found out that we were having a June baby and we didn't know the gender yet, I kept thinking June, and then I was organizing the baby stuff in the bedroom, and I, over the years, had saved all these Junie B. Jones books, and I was like, you know, when we have kids, I want to like introduce them to Goosebumps, Junie B. Jones, so I have Goosebumps and Junie B. Jones books in there, and I just kept looking at the name Junie, and I was just like, that is such a freaking cute name, and it's so fitting because we're supposed to have a June baby. So Junie was our girl name. But if you ask me over the years like what a boy name was, I never really fixated on one, and that's because I never even pictured myself as a boy mom. Right. And it's funny because if you look through my comments on my pregnancy announcement on Instagram and my pregnancy announcement on the vlog and on my plant account, there's like an overwhelming number of people that are like, I totally see you as a boy mom, or like even before, you know, you got pregnant or whatever, like I thought of you as a boy mom. And I just never, I don't know, I never saw it. Obviously I see it now that that's our reality. So no significance to the name Archie.
No,
really.
It's like my recollection was just, there was one day, and I don't know if something was on TV or what it was, but I believe it was you who said out loud, like, that's a great name, like Archie as a boy name. And for me, I have always liked that name, so I was immediately like, yeah, no, I love the name. Now, to be fully transparent, it actually has nothing to do with Archie comics, which is probably where most people what they would most readily associate with that name. Mind you, we watched a little bit of Riverdale, but again, even still, it has nothing to do with that. I would say for me, I think when you had mentioned that, I had somewhat recently watched, and sorry guys, this is what happens a lot with me, a sports documentary somewhat recently, and there's this famous football family, the Mannings, so Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, they were both in the NFL. I think it was their dad, whose name is Archie or Arch Manning, and so just the name was in my head because I had recently watched that when you brought up, and I liked the name, so when you brought it up I was like, yeah, no, I love that name, so it just we latched onto it. And this was within the last year. This isn't a long time ago.
No, this is a very recent name that we've kind of adopted. And I guess in all the boy names that we had potentially brought up, we never agreed
until this one.
Yeah, we never were like, yeah, that's the one. And I feel like there were a lot of names that I did like, names like Noah and things like that. But I didn't want any biblical reference. I'm not a religious person at all. Obviously, he grew up Catholic, but we're not like practicing Catholics or whatever. So I didn't want any biblical name, even though a lot of them have really cute names. Moses.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. I just didn't want it personally. So yeah, that's the significance of the name Archie. It's nothing that is super deep or anything. We just both really liked the name.
And I suppose it's a thing of because over the years, bringing up boy names, having gone through so many that we didn't agree on, it's like you kind of have to jump on that. Like we finally found one, and it was like that. She said it, and I was like, I love that name.
Yeah, we're like, let's not veer away from that.
Nope.
And it's so funny because I would say a few days before we found out the gender, there was one night that I can't remember if I wasn't feeling well, but I was just like plopped on the couch or on whatever, and we were just watching movies, watching TV, and twice that night we had watched Leave the World Behind, and the son's name is Archie in that, remember?
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I totally forgot. But
yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And I remember texting my sister, I'm like, I'm watching that new movie on Netflix and the son's name is Archie. Like, that's so weird. And then right after that movie ended, we're like scrolling through Netflix trying to find something else to watch. And then there's this like Bollywood
version of Archie.
Yeah, Bollywood version of Archie. And it's something,
the
Archies or something like that. I think that's what it's called. And I was like, dude, we're having a boy.
Yeah,
I mean, I already knew at that point we were having a boy. Like the intuition was so strong. But I was just like, the signs are freaking everywhere. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I don't know, those were just like reassuring things for me that I was like, I think this is the name that we should have for a boy. And I just think it's so cute.
It really is.
I always try and think like of when the child, like when I hear all these crazy unique names, I'm like, I'm trying to imagine it like when they're in school, in a job, if they're in a professional setting or whatever. I'm just like, can I imagine them still being like a respected person? Like, I don't want it to be so like cutesy that like, I don't know. That's so, but I don't know, when I hear the name Archie, I think it's cute.
It is, absolutely it is. And again,
and I think it's,
he can, if he prefers Arch or
Archibald, whatever he wants.
Archer's a great show. But yeah, like, exactly. There's options, and he can make it what he wants. But hopefully he'll like his name.
I hope he likes his name. Hopefully he doesn't change his name like my dad.
And if he does, he does. But I'll probably keep calling him Archie.
Yeah.
Just joking.
How did I find out I was pregnant, and how did I tell Vince? The week before I found out, so I would have been 3 weeks pregnant at the time, not knowing. My parents were visiting. They were in town.
Oh, yeah.
And I was ravenously hungry that week. I was craving everything. Like, I can't even tell you how many times. Like, we DoorDashed. I went to go get snacks. Like, we went to I went to H Mart with my mom, and I was like, this looks so good and that looks so good. We went to Costco. Oh my God, we spent like $300. And that week, I polished off that big bag of Chicago style popcorn. It's like the kettle, the mix of the kettle and the cheddar.
White cheddar.
I was like, why is this so good? I was like, this is the best thing I've ever had. And I was just like gobbling it all up. And even then, I never suspected that I was pregnant because, again, we had been trying for a year. And in my mind, I was like, something's wrong. Like, I don't think that it's going to happen. And, you get negative test after negative test every month. And you just, I don't know, kind of like deflates you a little bit. So There was the week that my parents came to visit, I kind of like spruced up my bathroom, I cleaned it up, and what I did was put my pregnancy tests, instead of the box that it was in, I would have to like reach under my sink and grab it. I kind of just put it in this little cup so that it was easier to grab. And I was using the Mira. If you guys don't know what the Mira is, I do think that that's the thing that honestly helped me get pregnant. It's this fancy device. You pee on a stick every day. You stick it in this little reader. It tells you all your levels on the app. It's crazy. It tells you exactly when you're ovulating, what your LH levels are. It's wild.
Not cheap, but very useful.
Not cheap at all, but very useful. So every morning I would pee on the stick, whatever. And so when I went to grab one of the sticks for the Mira, it was in the same cup as the pregnancy tests, and this would have been a day before my missed period, but I had already started getting PMS symptoms, like my boobs were hurting, I had cramps, and you know, I was just fatigued and stuff. So in my mind I was like, I'm not even pregnant, but you know what, these tests are going to expire soon and I should just take it. And it was really just for fun, and that's why I didn't record myself. Like I had recorded months before where it was negative, and so I was just like, I'm just over it. I don't want to have another video in my camera roll where I get another test, so a negative test. So I didn't even like think anything of it. I took my Mira test, took the pregnancy test. When I tell you, it was a habit of like grabbing both tests and just chucking it in the garbage. Same thing. I went to grab the test, I just chucked it. As it's like mid-air, I see the faintest line on the second one, and I was like, wait, no, like that can't be right. I literally had to dig it out of the trash can, and I saw like the faintest line, and I'll insert the photo of it. And I was like, no, this cannot be, this can't be right. Like this is crazy. And so I didn't even have time to like process what the hell was going on. He was on a work call when I got the positive test. So I like walk by his office. I don't even think to record him. I didn't even have my phone on me. I walk to the bedroom. I'm like going in circles. I'm just pacing.
And it's funny because even when, so I was on a work call, and some of my work calls, obviously I'm just like participating fully and like, you know, speaking and everything, so I don't really know what's going on around me, but this must have been a call where maybe if I was just more of an observer for that call, I kind of like could tell what you were doing a little bit. So like and where my desk is positioned in our office, at the time, it's different now, but at the time, just like where I'm facing my screen, kind of peripherally, I can see you in the bathroom.
Yeah.
So can kind of hear commotion, if you want to call it that, can see you. And then, yeah, I think you kind of came in, and then you just went into our room, and I heard you close the door to our room.
I didn't know, guys, like, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah,
I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where to go. Yeah. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I should call someone. I was like, well, he's on a call. I literally went into the bedroom, I closed the door, and I just I was pacing in circles. I was just so like stunned and confused. And even I always said, like, if I got a pregnancy test, like a positive test, obviously I wanted to record my initial reaction, I wanted to record his initial reaction, but it was so much of an incredible just shock in the moment that I didn't even think about recording. Right. I just wanted to tell him. Like, I didn't even want to do any kind of crazy surprise, and I just...
So then, yeah, eventually once I was off that call, I just remembered you came in, and you walked in, a couple feet away from me, and I was just looking at you, and like the look on your face, I was like, huh? And you were just like, I'm pregnant. And it was just, I think it was just waterworks right away. I'm pretty sure I started crying.
You were like, what? And I was like, I'm freaking pregnant. And I grabbed the test and I showed it to him. And even then I was in disbelief. I think I took like 7 tests that day. You
took a whole handful of tests that day.
Yeah. And here's the thing. The tests that I have are high sensitivity tests, so it can...
Oh, sorry. Shoot. My bad.
Sorry guys, the mic is like, this mic picks up everything, so even if there's vibration, it's gonna be like staticky. Oh, sorry. He's a noob, he doesn't...
I don't have my own YouTube channel.
So, what was I saying? Yeah, I have a high sensitivity test, so it can detect, your HCG levels, I think like 4 or 5 days before your missed period. So all of those tests were positive, and it's funny because I had a doctor's appointment that day for something else.
Right.
And so when I got there, I told my doctor, I was like, I think I'm pregnant. Like, and I showed him all the tests on my phone, and he's like, oh wow, like you are pregnant. But he's like, let's take a test here and confirm. And he had a regular test. It wasn't the early detection test, and it was negative. Like, he showed me the test. There was not even the faintest line on that test. So he's like, I'm not going to say you're not pregnant, but I also don't want to say you are pregnant. He's like, the early detection test, obviously, if it's detecting it, that means something's going on. So he sent me for a blood test. But it was just like crazy because on the way home,
you stopped by to get one of the more expensive.
Well, because I texted my sister. I'm like, well, I just took a pregnancy test at the doctor's and it was negative. She's like, you need to get a clear blue. She's like, get a clear blue. They have ones that tell you exactly how far along you are. And those are freaking expensive here. I paid like $32 for 2 tests.
Oh my.
It was wild. But I was like, I just want to know because now I'm not going to be able to sleep. So stopped by the store before I came home, took one of the clear blue tests, positive. It said I was 3 to 4 weeks pregnant at that time. And to me, that was enough. I was like, well, this clear blue doesn't lie,
Yeah.
And it took about a week for the blood test results to come back in. And so, I got the phone call from the doctor and he was like, yes, you are very pregnant. Like, obviously our test just didn't detect your HCG levels. But anyway, that's kind of like how it happened. It wasn't anything that was super recorded and staged. And I don't know. I had thought about the idea of surprising him doing something cute, but it's so different when it actually happens. Like, I was just in such shock that I couldn't even fathom the idea of not telling him.
And
for
put it
another
this
second.
way, it would have had to. I just would have picked up on something. It's not like you could have kept that for any long amount of time to plan how you were going to tell me, because I absolutely would have picked up on something's going on with you.
Well, I was freaking out. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to react. So I didn't get to surprise him. Unfortunately, I don't have a reaction of me or him because people have asked if I'm going to share that. But
Oh, that's okay.
that was just a moment for us. But in a way, it's kind of special that it was just this moment that was just shared between us and not necessarily recorded.
Total surprise and just natural reactions. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's how that happened. And another question said, we have 2 more questions. Do we want more kids after this?
So that's one that I would say getting closer to being resolved, if not already resolved. Like, put it this way, we kind of always envisioned having multiples when we would just think, when we did say we want to have kids, we would think of the future and it would be multiples. But, if I can be fully transparent, this has been a very difficult pregnancy, and I think that makes a huge difference. Like, when I hear Charmaine essentially say she can't envision herself going through this again, then absolutely. I've seen how difficult it's been for her, stressful, long nights, not a lot of sleep, so much not just all those things. It's I get it. If it's not what you would want to go through again, then that's totally valid. So maybe we lean more towards just the one, which would be special in and of itself. I've no problem with that. And then I guess the other part of it too is just that idea of so now that we know the first is a boy, if we did try for another, that could potentially be another boy. And just again, totally understand where Charmaine's coming from. She can see how difficult to manage that could be, having a house full of boys plus Pudge.
Boys are just a lot. I did get a lot of comments saying I'm a mom of 3 or 4 boys, you're gonna love it, whatever. But I do think everyone has their own experience, and I think I've just always been scared to be overwhelmed by just boys. I don't know. Because again, when I did imagine myself as mom, it was as a girl mom. Not to say that girls can't be crazy too, because Millie, sometimes she's running around like a freaking banshee. But I'm still coming to terms with the fact that I am a boy mom, and I don't know if I could envision having more than...
And again, just context, right? she has 2 sisters. Her sibling group is 3 girls.
Yeah.
And then her household would have been her mom and her dad. So it's the flip, where it's
all I know is just girls,
females
siblings,
and estrogen.
all girls,
Yeah.
and like, you
So
know, yeah, it's just, it would be an adjustment for sure.
So is it fair to say it's certainly not 100% for sure we would never try again, but like pretty...
I'm not gonna say 100%. Let's just say that I am definitely going to carry some kind of PTSD from the first trimester, because it was awful. It was awful. I cannot tell you how many times I have cried myself to sleep out of pure misery. And I think it is becoming more normalized now to talk about the realities of being pregnant, because I think before this it's like you're supposed to just talk about how much of a blessing it is, how grateful you are and how happy you are to be carrying the child. And like, you know, this is, I think it becomes sort of a dicey topic because of people who struggle to conceive or are infertile, and anyone who talks about like not being grateful for a child in their belly is like automatically being insensitive to people who can't even who can't conceive. But I'm just saying, from my personal, it's not that I've never been grateful for this child, it's just there have been moments where I was like, what did I get myself into? What did I do? Because the amount of times in the last 3-4 months that I have just been so miserably sick that I didn't even want to be awake. It, like, I just don't know if I want to go through that again. But at the same time, having grown up with siblings and being so close to them, it kind of makes me sad to think of Archie as an only child. But like, at the same time, you can't forecast if your kids are even going to be close. You know, there's plenty of sibling relationships that they're just no relationship at all. So it's like, I'm not trying to say that if we have another that they are automatically going to be as close, but like, I don't know, that's what I think of, is like, I loved having the sibling dynamic.
So did I. And
so there is a part of me that's just like kind of mourns something for Archie. You know, I think we'll see how this one goes and see just how it is, but I'm scared of getting pregnant again for sure because of what I experienced, but I also don't think I want to take it off the table completely. So I guess
it's kind of a wait and see. And
yeah, it's a wait and see.
It's a little bit of a theme, right? Like, again, we can at any one given time feel a certain way, and then time goes on. And that's fine. Like, if you adapt and you change and your viewpoint on something changes, like, I don't know, that's kind of been our relationship and our life in a lot of ways, all throughout. So yeah, if it changes, then it changes. If it doesn't, that's all good too.
Yeah. So, but we're just focusing on this one baby at a time. One baby at a time.
Which, again, actually, to bring that up, is like the whole fear. Before we, knew for sure there's only one baby in there was the fear of like, oh, what if it's multiples? Because my dad was a twin. Her first cousin has twins.
I was so scared.
It's just possible. Of course, it's a possibility. It could have been multiples, and then that would have been a rude awakening, going from no kids to 2 kids. Like, all respect to those who went through that, but that just seems like a lot.
I couldn't even fathom it. But I was scared because I felt like I was showing so early, or like my uterus started growing so fast, like in the beginning, and I was so sick, and I fixated on, like, I kept Googling like symptoms of multiple pregnancy, like, and I was like, I have all of them. My one thing that I clung on to was the fact that I got a negative test at the doctor, and typically I think like your HCG levels are way higher when you have multiples, and I was just like, I think that I would have had a positive test at the doctor if I did have more than one in there. But I was just scared because it's like, we live in an apartment. I felt like we were in a good financial place. to take care of one baby, and then I just thought about having 2, possibly 3, and I was like, where are they gonna go? How are we gonna? I just spiraled, and guys, it was like a legitimate fear for me. I was just like, you know, there are some people who like want multiples, and obviously are like, so, oh my god, these fungus nuts.
I know.
But I just was so scared. I was like, I don't think I could do it. I mean, obviously, if it happened, we would have had to.
You would make do, and it'd be fine, I'm
sure. But I was just like, oh my god, please, let there only be one in there. So at the first ultrasound, you know, obviously, we only saw 1 sac or whatever. But sometimes they miss it. Sometimes they miss it. And the first ultrasound was so fast that I was like, how do we even know she checked, like, thoroughly? You know, because I was just like in and out of there, like quick.
Yeah, it's fast.
Like she did a couple scans. This was the dating ultrasound at 9 weeks. Brought him into the room. She's like, this is the heartbeat. And then she was gone. Like it was so freaking fast. So when we did the private ultrasound, we paid for that. So I was like, can you just make sure, like really check in there. Just make sure I only have 1.
Nobody hiding back there.
Yeah, she's like, there's just 1. She had me turning, poking my belly. So there's just 1 in there. But anyway, yeah, off topic. But last question, not really a question, but I guess, do we have any final advice / thoughts on people who are like where we were, where they're just like on the fence? They don't know if they want kids or they do.
That's tough to say, because I
think everyone has like completely different circumstances, and you know, they're not all going to be in the same position that we're in. But in terms of making the decision, I think one thing that I want to really drive home, and I don't really care if people hate me for this, I don't personally feel like anyone should have the obligation or feel the pressure of bringing a child into the world if they really don't want to, no matter if that's familial pressure or honestly even pressure by your partner. I feel like whether you want kids or you don't, like, let that be your decision, and don't let anybody persuade you otherwise. Because I certainly, like, we got pressure from family about having kids. My grandma would remind me how my ovaries are aging. Even my mom would remind me, you know. But I think that is such a personal choice, and it's one that you shouldn't be guilted into, whether that be not having kids or maybe even having too many kids. I mean, I see it in my mom group all the time. Like, there are some women in this group who are on their like 5th or 6th pregnancy, and they're like so bummed that nobody is really happy for them. No one's really excited for them, and everyone's like worried. And again, it just comes down to what you want, because it's your life. It's going to be your kid. And I'll say that I think that we elaborated on the reasons why we didn't want to have a kid in the first place. But ultimately, we just decided that we wanted kids. To me, I personally felt like there was a point where I could feel something missing, and I could feel the envy that I had for my sister and the relationship she has with her kids, all of our friends and family who have kids. And I really want to say with full confidence that I wasn't influenced to have a kid because of like how they made it seem in pictures and videos and stuff, because we had been around that for years, and there were still moments where I was like, no, I don't want a kid. I do think I came to that decision on my own. And I don't know, I really don't know what the answer is. Like, I don't think that we could speak for everyone in terms of like any advice on like how to make that decision. I just feel like you have to feel it. Like, you just have to know. And
I'll just say, like, it's probably cliche, right? Like, there's shades of gray with everything. Like, obviously we've come to the point where we have made the decision and are now pregnant. So we made the decision we wanted to try, but it's not like once we made that decision, I suddenly discounted all the reasons or no longer found valid all the reasons why we before that made the decision or kind of were at a place where we didn't want to try. Like, everything is perfectly valid. It's not there's no right or wrong, right? So kind of going along, potentially changing over time your thoughts and kind of where you're at with that decision. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I suppose it was just, okay, I can see the validity of either way, but now let's project as best we can, future events. And like I said earlier, I came to the realization that I think I would have regretted not trying. And again, that has nothing to do with whether we would actually get pregnant, because of course we tried for a year. It was difficult. Maybe upon trying, we never would have conceived. I was ready for that future as well, but just realized that I would be much more at peace with knowing we tried. So, maybe that's a bit of it too. A bit of the equation is doing your best to forecast your best guess at how you would feel. Will you be at peace with the decision, whichever way it is, etc. And so I guess I could just say at some point I felt that I really wanted us to try, and I would regret it if we didn't.
Yeah. I think for me, the thing that really, really convinced me to have a kid was just being around the kids that are in our lives. Being around my niece and nephew, Millie and Ansel, being around his nephews. Well, they're my nephews too. Theo and Ollie, I don't know. I do feel a maternal instinct kick in when I am around them, and I actually enjoy taking care of them. When I'm back home in California, you'd think I just want to hang out with them and play, but really just relax and enjoy our vacation. But when I'm there, I want my sister to be hands off, and I want to be the one taking care of them. And then same thing with, when we babysit Theo and Ollie, I really love being around them. I love taking care of them. And I think I just saw it within myself. I think you could be a mom. I think you'd be good at it.
On the topic of our nieces and nephews, so my sister, who's the eldest, she has 2 kids, Oscar and Ruby.
Sorry, I didn't bring them up because they're so far away.
Yeah, they live in Edmonton. And they're 10 and 6, and just so seeing them and the kids they've become.
Oh my god, they're the dream children.
Exactly, and so I bring it up to say we have kind of the ages of our nieces and nephews across. From her sister and then my brother and my sister. It's just I feel like we've gotten to see a really good picture of what all the different stages up to, I guess Oscar's the oldest, he's 10, about to be 11, and it's just like she said, you see them become these amazing people, you see them go through all these stages, and we're seeing it from afar, not being the parents of these kids, but just the joy that they bring into their parents' lives, clearly how much they enjoy being around their parents. There's just so much love all around that I just felt this is what I envisioned when I saw myself as a dad, having those relationships with children, with your kids. I could at some point tell that I wanted that, and I wanted us to try for that, and I so look forward to that with Archie.
Yeah, I think overall I still have a lot of anxiety around having a kid, and even though now I'm fully on board with being a mom, obviously I still have the same worries that I did when we decided we didn't want kids, all the reasons. But I do think that for me personally, the feeling of wanting to be a mom and wanting to bring a kid into the world and raise a good kid, I think that just outweighed all of the things that I considered to be cons of having a kid. And so, all the sacrifices. So I think you just kind of have to try and picture your life with a child and really, really try and ask yourself, does that bring me, do I get feelings of happiness, or do I get more feelings of stress? If you're around kids, it's do you feel you want to take care of them? Do you enjoy being around them? Or do you get more stressed out when you're around them? Are you anxious to kind of leave that situation and kind of go back to your own little life? I think those are all things that you have to consider, and you really just have to kind of listen to the little cues that your brain is giving you when it comes to having kids. Because it is a difficult position to be in, to not know. I know how exhausting that can be, and I know how much pressure it can be, especially as a woman getting older. If you do have reproductive issues, like, yeah, it can be stressful. Right. So I don't know if this video helped anyone who is maybe on the fence. That was the goal. Again, like Vince said, I hope that anything we said does not offend you or did not offend you if you chose to kind of have, if you've had an unplanned pregnancy, planned pregnancy, whatever the situation may be. We all have our own circumstances. We all have our own kind of baseline or standards of what we hold ourselves to when bringing a kid into the world. So whatever our expectations for ourselves was, like, we certainly do not feel like that should be for everyone. Like, this is really just between us.
No, and I mean it. I don't think I can think of a better example of just the idea that there is no right or wrong in this. Like, honestly, if we had decided that the right way for us was not to have kids, then that would have been fine. And I actually know we would have had support from people too, because at one point, even though we know your parents did ultimately want us to have kids, there was a time when we felt very sure that we didn't, and they expressed their support for us. So it's like,
yeah, I am grateful for that.
Absolutely. So like, that's what I mean. There is no right or wrong. And like, you know, hopefully if you're in the position of needing to make a decision or are thinking about it, like, hopefully you would have a support system that would be there for you either way. And that's how I certainly felt. And so like, maybe that makes it a bit easier too, is just remembering there's no right or wrong. And the people that love you and care for you in your life, they'll be there for you either way.
And if my advice is, if anyone makes you feel a certain way about a decision that you have come to for your own life, if they have strong words against it or they make you feel any type of way, I say distance yourself. You know, like, don't like cut them out if that's what you feel like you don't want, but you can emotionally detach yourself from the things that person is saying and just remind yourself that, like, yes, that's their opinion, but it's not their life. They're not the ones that have to live through it every day. And who cares if they have so-and-so to say about you? Like, that's just an opinion. You know what I mean? Like, you're the one that's going to have to deal with the decision for the rest of your life, whereas that person gets to just walk away from the situation and just look at it from an outside perspective. So, you know, obviously we're very grateful that the people in our lives, really from every side, have been very supportive in our decision before to, like, not have kids, and nobody was like, you're gonna regret it, and like, you know, you're making the wrong choice. Like, they all kind of understood that, like, that was the choice we made and that was fine. So yeah, just surround yourself with good people, because it's already a hard enough decision to make if you're on the fence and you don't really need outside factors influencing you. You don't even need us influencing you, really. So yeah, that's our thoughts on the whole baby talk.
My baby's in there.
I can feel him wriggling around in here now. I have an anterior placenta, meaning my placenta is in the front. So typically you won't really see a lot of outside kicks until later. This doesn't mean that it's, you know, if you have an anterior placenta, that's going to be the same for everyone. But it seems like across the board, around the 20-week mark is when you can start seeing things poke around. Maybe more on the sides where, like, the placenta isn't. But even though I have an anterior placenta, I can still feel him inside of me, and it's very, very weird. I mean, it's cool, and yeah, I enjoy it, but I can't even imagine myself getting bigger. It's weird. I know I'm not huge right now, but like, sometimes I still look in the mirror. I'm like, I'm just bloated. No, that's not real. I'm just bloated. There's no way there's a kid in there.
I mean, I could have understood that up until last week where we had that ultrasound, and holy smokes, you see every little detail of him, like,
wriggling around in there.
Seeing the heartbeat, seeing his spine and like skeleton. I'm like, holy crap,
it was crazy.
Full ass human in there.
And even though I gravitated to wanting a girl, it was like, I knew in my heart that it was a boy. And when I saw him wriggling around on the screen, because mind you, before that, the ultrasound we got, he was like a little speck.
Yeah.
He was just like a little dot, and I was just like, well, it's a bunch of cells, I guess. Like, it didn't really feel super real at that point, but like when we saw him, like hands, legs kicking around, like I'd poke and he'd spin, I was like, I just like fell in love. Like, I at that point was like, I don't care if it's a girl or a boy, like it's just something's in there and it's like moving around and it's weird, it's crazy. I was like in shock. Also, did you know how scary it looks when you laugh with a child in you? Did you notice on the ultrasound when I would laugh, like it was just like friggin' shaking around? I'm like, how do they not get shaken baby syndrome in there?
Oh.
God, it's just like rattling around. And I was
so
like
funny.
apologizing so many times to the tech, but I kept laughing because it was so surreal, like to see him move around. I was just like in disbelief. My instinct was just to laugh because it was just so funny and crazy, and yeah, surreal is the only way I can describe it. But anywho, that's going to be the end of our chat. I don't know if we answered everybody's questions that they might have had, but obviously feel free to leave them in the comments. Maybe might do a part 2, or I'll just answer them in the comments, or Vince will answer them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this chat. Any last words?
No, not really. Just, yeah, like I said, it's fun to talk about it.
Fun chit chat.
Nice to see
Get our
you
thoughts
all
out there.
again.
Nice to see you. You are
can't
so
see any-
awkward. So awkward. Anyway, we're gonna go. Thank you everyone who has sat through this conversation and watched. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you liked it. By the time you guys watch this, it's probably gonna be January, so happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
25, 24. I told you, I always think it's 2024.
Holy smokes.
It's 2020. It's 2023. It's 2023. Yeah, happy New Year. Hope everyone had a good holiday, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye.